Look, Cap Harbor, Saint-Domingue. The shutters do nothing to stop the heat, or the smell. It is dawn, November 1st, 1802, and a French general is dying. The door to his quarters bangs open. A courier, soaked in sweat and sea salt, drops a dispatch onto a campaign map already stained with wine and desperation. The candle sputters. General Charles Leclerc, brother-in-law to Napoleon Bonaparte, picks up his quill. His hand shakes, not from fear of the enemy, but from the fire in his own blood. He scrawls a final, damning message to Paris: "My army is destroyed." He doesn't write, "defeated." He writes, "destroyed." And the cause isn't the brilliant Haitian generals, Dessalines and Christophe, who know the hills and the heat like the backs of their hands. The cause is a fever. A fever that turns eyes yellow, fills the stomach with black vomit, and has already put tens of thousands of his soldiers in the ground. Leclerc will be dead by nightfall. And because of the force that killed him, Napoleon will give up on his American empire and sell a piece of land that will double the size of the United States. All because of an enemy no one saw coming. An enemy that weighs less than a paperclip. So, did a mosquito sell the Louisiana Territory? Did a tiny insect general redraw the map of the world? We are opening the case file. And it is soaked in blood, sweat, and the buzz of a tiny wing. This isn't just a story about disease. This is a story about power. The power of the ignored. The power of the very, very small. For centuries, humanity's greatest generals and emperors drew their battle plans, moved their armies, and built their empires. They worried about gunpowder, supply lines, and the loyalty of their men. They never once thought to consult an entomologist. And that is why they lost. They lost ships, they lost colonies, they lost entire armies to a commander who had been fighting on this turf for millennia. A general whose supply lines were every puddle of standing water. Whose troops bred in the millions in rain barrels and cisterns. A general who needed no grand strategy, only instinct and opportunity. Tonight, we are putting that general on trial. We will call him the Mosquito General. And we will track his campaigns across the centuries, from the Caribbean sugar fields to the swamps of Panama, to the bloody jungles of the Pacific. We will see how this tiny, winged general broke armies, bankrupted nations, and dictated the terms of victory and defeat. This is the story of how the smallest thing in the world can hold the largest power. Our investigation begins with File A, Saint-Domingue, 1802. Napoleon Bonaparte is at the height of his power. He has a vision, a grand Western design. France will control the heart of North America. The key is the colony of Saint-Domingue, the richest jewel in the French colonial crown, which he calls the gateway to the Gulf. Its sugar and coffee plantations are meant to finance the entire enterprise. But there's a problem. The enslaved population, led by the brilliant Toussaint Louverture, has risen up and taken control, abolishing slavery. Napoleon cannot accept this. He needs that wealth. So he assembles one of the largest naval expeditions of the era. Over 30,000 of his best troops, veterans of his European campaigns, are put on ships under the command of his own brother-in-law, Charles Leclerc. Their mission is simple and brutal: crush the revolution, depose Louverture, and reinstate slavery. They arrive in February 1802, confident, clad in their European wools and brilliant blue facings. They are the most powerful army in the world, facing a ragtag force of former slaves. It should be easy. And at first, it is. The French forces are overwhelming. They capture port after port. Within a few months, they even capture Toussaint Louverture himself, tricking him into a meeting and shipping him off to a freezing dungeon in the French mountains where he will die. Leclerc believes he has won. He writes to Napoleon, victory is at hand. But Louverture had left him with a warning. He said, "In overthrowing me, you have cut down in Saint-Domingue only the trunk of the tree of liberty. It will spring up again from the roots, for they are numerous and deep." Leclerc didn't understand. The roots weren't just the resolve of the Haitian people. The roots were the island itself. The climate. The ecology. As the summer rains began to fall, a new commander entered the field. The Mosquito General. Its army was the Aedes aegypti mosquito, a species that thrives in urban environments. It doesn't need a swamp. It needs a city. Every water barrel, every discarded coconut shell, every hoofprint in the mud that fills with rain becomes a barracks, breeding thousands of new soldiers. And with them comes the yellow fever. It starts with a headache. Then chills. Then a burning fever. The surgeons in their blood-stiffened aprons watch in horror. They've never seen anything like it. Men's skin turns a ghastly yellow. They vomit black, coagulated blood. Then, a calm. The fever breaks. For a few hours, the men feel better. They ask for water. They talk of home. And then, they quietly die. The hospital ledgers become a blur of names. Reinforcements arriving from France become replacements. The grand European army begins to melt away. By August, Leclerc's confident letters to Napoleon turn desperate. He begs for more men. He writes, the mortality is prodigious. The Haitian generals, Dessalines and Christophe, see what is happening. They don't need to fight a pitched battle. They retreat to the mountains, letting their silent ally do the work for them. They use the fever as a weapon, drawing the French into the fetid, mosquito-infested port cities. By October, Leclerc's army is a ghost of its former self. Of the more than 30,000 soldiers sent, only a few thousand remain fit for duty. Over 20 French generals are dead. Leclerc himself retreats to the island of Tortuga, hoping to escape the plague. It is too late. The general has already marked him. On November 1st, he scrawls his final dispatch. On November 2nd, he is dead. His wife, Napoleon's own sister Pauline, cuts off her hair, places it in his coffin, and flees the cursed island. By 1803, the last of the French burn their stores and sail away in defeat. On January 1, 1804, Jean-Jacques Dessalines declares the independent Republic of Haiti. Back in Paris, Napoleon faces a cold reality. His Caribbean base is gone. His army is destroyed. His American dream is dead. Without Haiti, the vast territory of Louisiana is useless to him, and worse, impossible to defend from the British. So he makes a calculated decision. He sells it. All of it. To the young United States, for $15 million. The Mosquito General had not just won a war, it had sold a continent. But this was not the general's first campaign. Nor would it be his last. Let's pull up File B, the Darien Scheme, a full century earlier. The year is 1698. The Kingdom of Scotland is proud, independent, but poor. It dreams of its own empire, a slice of the lucrative global trade dominated by England and Spain. A charismatic financier named William Paterson, the man who had helped found the Bank of England, comes up with a brilliant, audacious plan. Scotland will establish a colony on the Isthmus of Panama, at a place called Darien. They will build a trading post that connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, creating a global hub that will make Scotland rich beyond its wildest dreams. The idea is electric. The entire nation is swept up in the patriotic fever. People from all walks of life, from lairds to laborers, invest. They pour in an estimated quarter of the entire country's liquid wealth into this single venture. In July 1698, the first 5 ships, carrying 1,200 hopeful settlers, set sail from Leith Harbor. They call their new home, New Caledonia. They arrive to a land that is lush, green, and beautiful. But the air is thick, heavy as wet wool. The mangrove roots twist through the salt-laced mud. And the rain, when it comes, is relentless. The settlers' journals start hopefully. They clear land, they build a fort, they plant crops. But then the entries begin to thin. A man comes down with a fever. Then another. Then a dozen. The colony's doctor is baffled. He bleeds them, but they only get weaker. They die in their hammocks, bewildered and delirious. The carpenters, who were meant to be building a new world, are now building nothing but coffins. Hunger gnaws at them, but the fever harvests faster. The Mosquito General is on the field, deploying 2 of its most effective battalions, Aedes aegypti with its yellow fever, and the swamp-loving Anopheles, carrier of malaria. Their numbers are endless. They bite through wool, through canvas, through hope itself. Within a year, the colony is a graveyard. The few survivors, skeletal and broken, abandon the settlement. A second expedition arrives, unaware of the fate of the first, and the nightmare repeats itself. By 1700, the dream of New Caledonia is dead. More than 2,000 people have perished. The financial blow is catastrophic. Scotland is bankrupted, its confidence shattered. This financial ruin is a key factor that pushes a proud, defiant nation to the negotiating table with its old rival. In 1707, the Acts of Union are signed, and Scotland joins with England to form Great Britain. A nation's sovereignty, traded away in the wake of a defeat inflicted by an enemy no one even knew was there. Fast forward another century. Napoleon is back. And he has forgotten the lesson of Haiti. File C, Walcheren, 1809. Britain decides to strike a blow against the French Empire. They assemble the largest expeditionary force in their history, almost 40,000 men, a massive fleet, to attack the French naval base at Antwerp, in the Netherlands. The plan is to land on the island of Walcheren, at the mouth of the Scheldt estuary, and use it as a staging ground. They land in late July, a hot, humid summer. The island is low, marshy, and crisscrossed with stagnant ditches and canals. The British commanders know the terrain is unhealthy. A French force that occupied the island a few years prior had been decimated by sickness. But they ignore the warnings. The advance stalls. The commanders bicker. And as the army waits, the Anopheles mosquitoes breeding in the summer-warmed ditches launch their attack. It's called Walcheren fever. A brutal form of malaria. Men collapse on parade, shivering uncontrollably one moment, burning with fever the next. Within weeks, the army is paralyzed. By October, out of 40,000 troops, fewer than 6,000 are fit for duty. Hospital records describe men, once proud soldiers, swollen like barrels, dying in delirious agony. The expedition is a catastrophic failure. They withdraw in December, having achieved nothing. More than 4,000 British soldiers are dead, but only 106 of them were killed in combat. The rest were casualties in a war they never knew they were fighting, defeated by the Mosquito General's perfect use of terrain. The British government is disgraced. The army's readiness is shattered for a year. Another empire, humbled by a map of water that nobody drained. For centuries, this was the pattern. Empire after empire, army after army, marching into the domain of the Mosquito General and being broken. But then, something changed. Humanity began to learn the enemy's name. The battlefield shifted. Welcome to File D, Panama, 2 attempts. The first comes in 1881. The hero of the Suez Canal, Ferdinand de Lesseps, leads a French company to achieve the dream that defeated the Scots, to cut a canal through the Isthmus of Panama. They arrive with dredges, dynamite, and supreme confidence. They believe it is a simple matter of engineering. It is a massacre. The same invisible enemies that destroyed the Darien colony are waiting. Yellow fever and malaria tear through the workforce. The French build beautiful, state-of-the-art hospitals. But they are designed with a fatal flaw. To protect the patients from ants, the legs of the hospital beds are placed in little bowls of water. Each bowl becomes a perfect, shaded nursery for Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, who then hatch and feast on the sick, spreading the fever from bed to bed. The hospitals become death factories. After 8 years, the project collapses in bankruptcy. Over 20,000 workers are dead. Then, in 1904, the Americans take over. And they bring a new kind of weapon. Not a bigger dredge, or more dynamite. They bring a doctor. Colonel William C. Gorgas. Gorgas is a veteran of the yellow fever wars in Havana. He has read the revolutionary work of scientists who proved that mosquitoes, not bad air, carry the diseases. He knows who the real enemy is. But when he presents his plan, the Canal Commission, a group of engineers and bureaucrats, laughs at him. They want to dig dirt, not fight bugs. They deny his funding requests for screens, for fumigation chemicals, for drainage pipes. But Gorgas is relentless. He fights them, pleads with them, and finally, with the backing of President Theodore Roosevelt himself, he gets what he needs. And he declares war. Total war. On the Mosquito General. This is humanity's first true counteroffensive. Gorgas's campaign is a masterpiece of military medical strategy. His soldiers are sanitation workers, 4,000 of them. They go house to house, fumigating. They drain every swamp, every puddle. They cut miles of ditches. They screen every window and door. They put a thin layer of oil on any standing water they can't drain, suffocating the mosquito larvae. They issue quinine to the workers with the same rigor as a paymaster issues wages. It is a war of relentless, grinding detail. A war fought with oil cans and window screens. And it works. The results are stunning. In 1906, the last death from yellow fever is recorded in the canal zone. Malaria mortality plummets. The work accelerates. The engineers can finally do their job because a doctor first did his. In 1914, the first ship makes the cut from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It is a triumph of steel and concrete, made possible only by a revolution in biology. Gorgas didn't just defeat the mosquito in Panama. He wrote a new rulebook for power. And the first rule was, know your enemy, especially the small one. That new rulebook would be put to the test in the largest conflict in human history. File E, Guadalcanal, 1942. The U.S. Marines land on a humid, jungle-choked island in the Pacific. They are fighting the Empire of Japan in a brutal, tooth-and-nail campaign. But they soon discover they are fighting a second enemy. An enemy that swarms in the dusk, that breeds in the shell holes and bomb craters that pockmark the landscape. Malaria. On Guadalcanal, it's not just a disease, it's a strategic factor. In the autumn of 1942, infection rates are astronomical. In some units, nearly every single man gets sick. More than 2/3 of the division are disabled by tropical diseases. The number of men lost to malaria is 5 times higher than those lost to combat. General Douglas MacArthur himself states, "This will be a long war if for every division I have facing the enemy, I must count on a 2nd division in the hospital with malaria and a 3rd division convalescing." The fight against the Anopheles mosquito becomes as critical as the fight against the Japanese. Commanders who ration bullets with care now have to ration atabrine, the anti-malarial drug. They enforce malaria discipline with the same ferocity as rifle discipline. Sleeves must be rolled down at dusk. Mosquito nets must be used. Any standing water near a camp is treated as if it were an enemy minefield. They are applying the lessons of Gorgas on the front line. They finally treat the mosquito not as a nuisance, but as an enemy battalion. A battalion with supply lines, the puddles and rain. Bases, the shade under the jungle canopy. And seasons, the rainy months when its numbers swell. Once they start fighting the mosquito like a soldier, the casualty rates from disease begin to fall. And the campaign begins to turn. The same grim battle is being fought in every theater, from the swamps of New Guinea to the rice paddies of Burma. A Second World War, fought in the bloodstreams of millions of soldiers. This unseen war has been carving its own map onto our world for millennia. Look at File F, the fever line of empire. For centuries, West and Central Africa were known as the white man's grave. European expeditions would push inland, only to be wiped out by malaria and yellow fever. The coastline was littered with the tombstones of failed ventures. But in the mid-19th century, the mass production of quinine, an effective anti-malarial, changed everything. Suddenly, Europeans could survive in the interior. This biological advantage, combined with machine guns, is what enabled the brutal scramble for Africa. Quinine didn't just open a continent, it opened the door to a new age of exploitation. A line on the map, once drawn by a mosquito, was erased by a pill. This story is even written into our own bodies. File G, Bodies as Maps. Why is the sickle cell trait, a genetic blood disorder, most common in people of African, Mediterranean, and South Asian descent? Because carrying one copy of the sickle cell gene provides significant protection against malaria. The gene's prevalence is a living map of the mosquito's historic reign. This biological reality had a cruel and cynical application in the age of slavery. Plantation owners and military commanders in the Caribbean noted in their ledgers that newly arrived Europeans died from fever at far higher rates than enslaved Africans who had grown up in malarial zones and acquired partial immunity. This horrific calculus of life and death, of immunity and exploitation, was a fundamental part of the economics of empire. The verdict is in. And it is undeniable. An organism we barely notice has acted as one of the most powerful forces in human history. Empires have drawn their grand strategies based on gunpowder and steel, while completely overlooking the ordnance of a simple water barrel. The Mosquito General's rule of power is clear: if you do not control the smallest logistics, the water, the screens, the basic discipline, your grandest strategy is doomed to fail. Terrain isn't just hills and rivers. It is temperature. It is the life cycle of an insect. It is the biology of your own army. Power that ignores biology will always, eventually, become tribute to it. So why does this matter now? Because the general is not retired. The war is not over. The ranges of mosquitoes are shifting, expanding with climate change. A warmer world is a world more hospitable to them. Our cities, with their plastic buckets, clogged gutters, and new construction sites, are creating perfect new nurseries. Global air travel is a troop transport for pathogens, closing the gap between a disease outbreak in one time zone and a clinic in another in a matter of hours. Every heatwave, every flooded suburb, every hastily constructed refugee camp is a rehearsal of Le Cap in 1802. The decisive moment is not in a throne room or a situation room. It is in a puddle of water by a generator. It is in a torn screen in a barracks. It is in a budget line for a pump that gets cut. Our maps are still being drawn by the smallest things. Join this investigation. In every historical event, in every modern crisis, ask yourself, what was the tiny thing that had the biggest vote? The answer might be buzzing right next to your ear. We do these high-stakes investigations into the hidden forces that shape our world every single day, so subscribe to ensure you don't miss the next file we open. And check out the video on your end screen now, it's another story of a forgotten force that changed everything. Now, for the legacy question. You are the quartermaster of a city facing a record-breaking heatwave. You have a limited budget. You can spend it on armored vehicles to control potential riots over scarce resources, or you can spend it on 10,000 window screens, draining the swamps on the edge of town, and stockpiling medical supplies. What do you buy? And how do you explain that choice to a family when either the fever comes, or the riot does? Let me know in the comments below.